Hey, welcome to Gold's Garage, and thank you for supporting my channel. We're back at Daryl's Dyno again today. This is March the 1st. We're looking for a weather break, and it's probably the coldest, worst day of the year. My poor customer wanted to be here, Paul Vanderspeck, and he is an hour away in the blizzard and not going to make it. So we're gonna do the runs and publish a video about it anyway, but the idea was the customer would be part of that. So this is the 355 that we talked about. It's been finished for quite a while. We're just waiting for a dyno date. And it's got the unique 292 angle plug cylinder heads. They're GM heads. These heads were never on a car, never sold by GM on a car. They were designed for racing back in the 70s, and they were the hot setup to have. The angle plug, probably the best of all GM heads, except for, of course, the Vortec heads, which came along 20 years later. So we haven't started it yet. We got everything ready to go. We're going to fire it up and warm it up, and we're going to we're starting with a 650 Brawler carburetor, Daryl's carburetor. We're going to try a few carburetors. We were going to run it with the customer's carburetor, but he's not here. So we'll try to see what the best jets and so on are, and timing. And yes, also, these are sprint car headers. They are not the best headers to dyno. This is a 355. It's probably going to be, you know, under 400 horsepower anyways. It's not a big cam. It's not big compression. The reason we're using the sprint car headers is because angle plug heads, we can't use conventional headers. You cannot get the spark plugs in. And if you are, my customer, I think, uses special headers and shorty spark plugs. So that's one of the disadvantages. These are just shop spark plugs. And we're going to fire it up and make some pulls and see how it runs. And thank you for watching. Hey, welcome back. So we've just made first pull, and I'll let Daryl comment on where we're at. He put his shop 650 carburetor on it. Started with 34 degrees of timing. And I'll tell you this much, we've got about 375 horsepower at 5,200, but it's still going up, so we don't know. We usually start pretty conservatively just to test the engine out, and we will increase the RPM until the power stops going up. So let Daryl comment on what else.
I adjusted the upper range to 5,500 already because we know it's still making power.
Okay.
So we're going to take it up a little higher until it stops making power, and then once it falls off, that's where we'll keep it. But first initial pull, like Alan said, we got 374.5 horsepower and it's like 415 foot-pounds of torque at 4,400. And just looking at the mixtures and stuff, everything looks pretty good right now. It's looking like it might be slightly lean, but I don't think it is really. I think it'll be all right there. What we'll do is start to interrupt you.
Yeah,
no, that's all right.
We'll have Mike put the cam specs in the description. It's just a nice street cam. My customer is Paul Vanderspeck, and I built an engine for his dad, Henry, about 4 or 5 years ago, so a return customer. And Paul's got an S10 that it's going in, and he was supposed to be here, but we already mentioned weather beat him down, and he didn't make it, so we're doing this on our own. So
yeah, just to say, again, this is a box stock 650 Brawler, and I have three of them. I got a 650, 750, and 850, and every one of them, we put them on. We don't have to touch them. They're friggin', I think, as far as my experience of doing this, if you're going to buy a carburetor just to bolt on your car, that's what you should get as a Brawler. Very rarely do we touch the jets or anything on them. They're really good.
You think our fuel and air is pretty close right now?
Yeah, we're gonna do some. It's decent enough. We can do some timing with it first and see, because that'll change all the brake specific numbers as well. So I think it's right in the range where we can leave it alone.
Also a little high in the oil, so sometimes it makes a little more power if there's no windage tray or anything on this engine. So we're probably going to drain a quart of oil out of it for the next pull. So
yeah. foot-pounds of torque. Nice.
Take it.
Still climbing. We're gonna have to rev it up some more.
Still climbing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to take it up 6,000.
So Daryl, this is our second pull. We took a little bit of oil. It's still almost the full mark. It was a little overfilled. So we took about a quart of oil out of it. We're just under the full mark now. It's only the second pull. So I'll let you say what happened with it, Daryl.
Yeah, it's well, this engine, this is only our second pull, so if we do 3 runs normally to get the ring seated in, once it starts to repeat, then we can start tuning. So it's still climbing, his rings are still seating in, but we went from like 375 up to 400 horse already, and 421 foot-pounds of torque. So ring seating in and getting rid of that oil out of the crankcase, you can lose 5 to 10 horsepower by having too much oil in there because the crankshaft hits it and gets caught up in windage and stuff. So drain some oil out. That helped, and of course the ring seating.
It wasn't fun draining it, by the way.
No. Alex and I had bets whether Alan was going to drop the oil pan or the oil plug in the bucket.
We got it though.
No. So yeah, we're going to do another run and raise the upper RPM range because it's still climbing. So we're going to take her up until it stops making power.
So the cam is, I did not change the cam. It was the customer's cam. It was a Comp 280, which is I think 470 lift, intake and exhaust, and it's a symmetrical cam and 230 degrees duration. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So that when we took this engine apart, the cam was in great shape, so we reused it. And by the way, a used cam that's broken in is more valuable than a new cam, because you don't have to break it in. So
yeah, you don't have to worry about flat tap.
You don't have to worry about a flat tappet or anything. So anyway, we're pretty happy. 400 horsepower and climbing. We'll see what happens next.
We got 409 horsepower and 410 right there. And that's like 431 foot-pounds of torque.
So one of the themes of this video is the Chevrolet 292 angle plug heads. And so this engine is almost identical to the last engine that I had here on the dyno, except it had Promax 185 heads. And this has got the GM 292 heads. They're not ported. We did completely rebuild them, but they're not ported, and it's got as much power anyway as the Promax heads had. So pretty happy with that. What RPM was that, Daryl?
Yeah.
Dipping around at the end there.
Yeah, that's the dyno. I was just going to explain that.
Okay. Yeah, you do that.
Peak horsepower was at 5,400. It was 409.7, and then 5,500 was 409. Then it went down to 400. So, yeah, if you notice at the end here, kind of started going goofy. That's the dyno doing that. I had the dyno set up for that big horsepower Pontiac, so I had a lot more water being pumped into the water brake.
Oh, okay.
So that happens when you get a lower horsepower engine but at a higher RPM. It'll the dyno can't control the amount of water that I got going into it, so it'll start to surge. So I thought I heard it a little bit, but at the end of the run. So
got it.
It's an easy fix. I just go in there and do an adjustment, and it'll be a smooth run.
So we have not even moved the timing yet. We started at 34 degrees. I guess we'll go up a couple and see what happens.
Sure. Yeah.
Might as well. We're here. That's only 3 pulls. We're basically, reach our objective already. So.
Yeah. Well, you're surpassed what you already thought you were gonna. You're hoping you were gonna make. You did that on your first run.
Good stuff.
Sounded like a better run. Let's see. better. Let's look at the graph and see. Yep, nice and smooth. There we go. All right. So we got 408 at 6,000. It's still climbing.
It's still.
Well, it was like 403, 407, 406, 405, 407, 406, 408. So it was kind of, I guess I wouldn't say it's climbing, but it's staying, it's starting to level off when you look at the graph.
I guess I should comment. Since the last pull, I bumped the timing, but we never actually measured it. So we'll come back to you and tell you what it's at. Probably about 36 or 37 degrees.
Yeah, we'll check that out.
So we actually got a little bit less power,
Yeah,
408 instead of 410.
The torque was down a little bit too, and usually if you have too much timing, the torque's going to be the first thing that falls off, and
So
it's
we
down a little
probably
bit,
went-
so we maybe
yeah.
went too much in it. So.
We'll come back. We'll check what that is. It's not very much, but
Yeah.
one of the things Daryl follow up comment. I asked them what temperature are we testing the engine. So one of my influences, I'm always talking about Bill Jenkins. So I read the Bill Jenkins book. When he was racing pro stock back in the 70s, he would actually use electric water pump, I'm just quoting him, and turn the water pump off when he's staging to get the engine over 220 degrees before he launched it. He felt that it made the most power up there. We usually test at 140 degrees, right?
Yeah. Yeah, most of the race engines we run about 140, and we were talking a little bit off camera about it, and I said, well, every engine's different. That's why we dyno. I said certain ones make horsepower with cooler temperatures. Some, like I had a 351 Ford on here, and the more heat we put into it, the more horsepower it made. So
well,
I mean,
that's
why
his
we
theory.
dyno, right? That's why we dyno, because I mean, every engine's different. Even though you can build two exactly the same engines, and they're not going to make the same power.
I guess the other limitation, you can keep doing that until you start detonating, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it'd be the same idea.
You're
as
going to lose it back, basically. The same as
doing
timing. You basically
timing
gain
and
power until you start detonating. And
Yeah.
That's the
So-
negative side. So we're going to double check that timing and see what it was.
Mhm.
Probably go back to 34. It's a nice safe number to run on the
Yeah,
street with.
well, if it
anyway.
makes the most power there, then that's where it's going to
Yes,
be happy.
yeah. We're pretty close to being done here today. So
Yeah, it's working well.
fuel and air, Daryl, you okay
Yeah,
with fuel?
no,
and
I'm
air?
happy with everything. It's yeah, I'm not going to touch the carburetor. It's good. I'm quite happy with everything on it.
So-
I checked the brake specific air consumption. I was afraid those big headers might over scavenge, but they're not. So I'm happy with that. There's the oil pressure all the way through. It's nice and steady. Vacuum at wide open throttle. It's 0.7 to 1, which is nice. That means I did pick the carburetor sizing properly. So
What about mechanical efficiency? Have you got that on there?
I do.
Because my video that's coming out right now is about that. So
I just gotta find it. Forget what page. There it is. Mechanical efficiency, right there.
now at peak torque, it should be about the best, right?
Probably in that. I forgot.
85.
Yeah, 85.
86 up there at 3,500, eh? So
Yeah.
around there. So
Yeah.
what happens is, as the RPM goes up, as long as the cam and the valves and all that can fill the engine, it'll keep making power. But friction keeps going up regardless of that, and so it's subtracting from that power. At some point, the friction gets so high that the torque drops off, and that's when the horsepower carries it until it drops off too fast, and now they both fall off.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, like I say, like my desktop dyno I have, it shows mechanical efficiency, and in there it shows the horsepower that it makes on the dyno, but it also shows the horsepower it would make without the mechanical
Indicated
efficiency.
horsepower,
Yeah,
which
like-
is about 100 more horsepower, right?
Yeah, depending on what the engine is. Yeah, the
Yeah.
bore and stroke and all that stuff, it makes a difference too. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite a bit bigger without the friction, but you can't build an engine with no friction.
Yeah. Well, this will go together with the other video that I. By the time you see this one, it'll already be out there. It's
There you go.
coming out right about now, actually. So.
Cool.
Okay. So the other comment we make, this Mike can put this in or not, but back in the 60s when I was hot rodding, the ultimate was probably a 375 horse fuel injected Corvette. That was, if you had that, you were the king of the road, right?
Oh yeah.
And now this is just a nice little S10. It's going to make 410 horsepower, so and 420 some foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
he'll have trouble hooking that up in that little pickup. It'll spin and spin and spin.
He'll be spinning the tires, that's for sure. There's a bump at there. Is that the dyno there? Or is that 410?
We'll see.
411.
Well,
411 horsepower.
Yeah.
We'll take it. And how much torque, Carol?
Let's see. 432.
430 foot-pounds.
I think you found its happy spot, that's for sure.
So I guess the message of this video is, the old school angle plug NASCAR or whatever heads versus Promax did pretty good. They actually made a few more horsepower than the last couple of 350s I built were almost identical to this, and they were just like 405 horsepower or so. So the old school heads did pretty good.
Yeah. Let's see what we got for averages. Yeah, before we were 399.4. Now we're 400.7 for average torque.
And we're at 36 degrees now, by the way.
323 average horsepower, and you're 324. So, yeah. I think you found its happy spot for timing too, because it was it made a little more torque.
Yeah.
At this one, so.
Yeah, when the torque goes down, you got too much timing, basically, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So that's, I think we're where we want to be.
Yeah.
We are going to make another pull just to verify some carburetors. You can talk about that if you want.
Bill Little dropped a carburetor off here. It's obviously not going to be good for this engine. I believe it's an 850. He just wants us to put it on to try it and make sure that it runs and doesn't leak or anything. So we're going to do a comparison of that just for fun, just to see what kind of horsepower it makes with a big carburetor on it.
What do you know? If it makes more, we'll come back to you. How's that?
It'll be interesting. It should hurt it.
Should hurt it.
It should hurt it, but.
So the other thing was great big headers, great big carburetor.
Yeah.
Well, everything against logic, and if it works, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'd be kind of funny if it did. We'd be like,
anyway, we're happy with 411 anyway. So
yeah, that's pretty good power for weight.
This is for you, Paul.
That's a lot more than you expected.
I didn't think it would make 400 horsepower.
You were hoping for 375, and you did that right off the get-go.
Yeah, with those heads, I didn't think it would. It's 10-to-1 compression, reasonably mild cam, nice street motor, idles at 700 RPM, no problem.
Yeah, it's going to work well.
So Paul's gonna have some fun with it.
Same. 402 horse. And 427 foot-pounds of torque.
Torque's almost the same, eh?
Yeah.
About 10 less horsepower though, eh?
Yeah. Nice graph.
That's an 850 carburetor, guy. We were just testing the carburetor more than anything.
Yeah.
So, you're making 400 horsepower, a 650 carburetor is obviously plenty.
Yeah. The difference between the two, this one, most likely why it's down on power is because of the size of it. You've lost velocity, which is going to affect your cylinder filling. So that's most likely why it lost power. But
the other thing, even if it was the other way around, the best carburetor on the street's not necessarily the best carburetor on the dyno.
No,
For
not
throttle
always,
response, right? So
Yeah.
650's a good number for an engine like this anyway.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like that's I would never suggest that size of carburetor for this
No.
type of build for a customer for sure. No. Even if it made more horsepower, I still wouldn't because you're down low throttle response and all
Right,
that. It'd probably
right.
have a
Drivability is more important than maximum. How often are you going to be at 6,000 RPM? By the way, so we'll talk about it at the end, but we were still pulling at 6,000 RPM with this
yeah.
thing.
It wasn't climbing any, but it was just
Hanging in
leveling
there.
off, and it looked like it was going to go up, but it
Yeah.
didn't. It
Pretty happy.
stayed pretty well right where it was.
Good day today. Okay, we're going to close it off here today. Just Daryl and I today. It's probably the worst winter day, March the 1st winter day that we've had all winter pretty much. Right now it's freezing outside. Anyway, so my customer didn't even make it here because of the weather. So Paul and Dad Henry, that's just for you guys. So I'll let Daryl cap off what we did and what we achieved, and I'll finish off at the end. Go ahead, Daryl.
Well, like I said a couple times already, we started out with 375 horse, which is what you were hoping for right in the very first run. So that was awesome. We surpassed your number,
Yeah,
got your number right off the get-go.
Very happy.
And after a few runs, you get the ring seated in, and some timing changes. Ended up with 411 horse and I think 430 foot-pounds of torque in that neighborhood. So that's real good working engine. This is going to make that S10 fly.
Timing?
Yeah.
Timing, we started at 34, went to 38, and back to 36.
Yeah, 36 degrees.
And
seemed to
did
be
the
its happy
best at
spot.
36, which is almost, for guys out there, you're not dying your engine. If you put it at 35 or 36 degrees,
Yeah, you're going to be in the ballpark.
even if it's a Dodge engine, it'll probably make about
Yeah.
the same power, right? That's
Yeah.
usually where they work the best.
Yeah.
So let me talk about the engine a little bit because I had to think about it. It's been a long time since I built this engine. It's got a complete Eagle rotating assembly in it, and it's 4030. And the heads, the real issue is the comparison of the 292 angle plug heads because, as I've mentioned already, the last two 350s I Dyno both had the ProMax 185s, and they both made just over 400 horsepower.
Yep.
Very similar cam, 10-to-1 compression, almost identical engines. Other than that, 650 carburetor. And so, as I told Daryl when I got here, if I made 375, I was going to be happy. Well, I underestimated those heads. They outdid the ProMax heads, really.
It's better to underestimate than
Absolutely.
expect
You're always
more
better
and be
to
disappointed. So.
under promise and overachieve, I guess,
Yeah,
this
I
time.
know. I
So,
tell a lot of dyno customers, don't be disappointed with what it makes for horsepower. What it makes is what it does, right? And
yeah, so we're pretty happy, and I
Yeah.
hope Paul and Henry are going to be happy with their nice little motor and their S10. And
yeah, and we can touch again on those headers just to make sure nobody blows up your channel about the headers being too big. 'Cause
yeah, so we
they're-
got the sprint car headers on because angle plug heads, the only negative thing about angle plug heads, by the way, if you can find 292 angle plug heads, they work pretty good, as you can see. I think they're pretty rare because they were never put on a street car. They were only provided aftermarket for NASCAR and CASCAR, drag racers and so on. Bill Jenkins has got a whole section of his book about the 292 angle plug heads. He used them in some of his pro stock cars. So they're pretty cool. The negative thing is you can't put an ordinary street header on them. I think in Paul's S10 he even has to use special surety spark plugs in order to make them work. So that's the problem with them, and he told me it was a nuisance getting it all to fit in there. But if you can do that, but probably a smaller diameter header, we might have made more
Yeah.
horsepower, right?
Possibly, yeah. I checked my headers. Both right bank headers wouldn't fit on there without burning the wires off, so that's why we went with these. But do you think the ram's horn manifolds would work on that, like the ones in the Corvette?
They won't. I don't think they'll
They
fit.
won't fit either? No, I just wondered because of they came up.
They're pointing. They point in.
Yeah, cause they come up and around. I
Maybe
thought
they would.
They
I
might.
mean-
They might clear if you had to run a manifold.
Yeah. The log ones, like
Yeah.
the later cars, definitely wouldn't fit. I don't think.
No, I
but
don't think so. But
But
I thought those ones maybe would, just because they kind of come out and up away, so they might be away from the plugs. You might
There's
get away with a
probably
manifold like
headers
that. But
probably headers that are made to work with them too, right?
yeah, I'm sure you could find something if you.
Paul's got it because this engine was in Paul's truck, by the way.
Oh.
And he brought it to me because it was starting to show signs. I think had a knock in it or whatever. I forget what all the details were. But the engine ran pretty good for him even before it was rebuilt, until he started to lose oil pressure and a few other things like that. So anyway, that's not a problem now. All the other numbers were good. We actually achieved our goal on the second pull, so we were pretty happy. Still making good power, still making almost 410 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. So
yeah, it carried the power up top really well.
It's nice flat torque curve.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
So, Paul, you better get some big tires for your S10 because you're going to need them.
Yeah, it's going to pull really hard if you can hook it up.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Scratch. So, we finished the dyno runs yesterday on Paul's 355, but I mentioned yesterday the weather was terrible. He lives over an hour away and just could not get here because of the weather conditions. So, unfortunately, we had to do all this stuff without the customer there. I always like to have my customers present. They're a part of the story. So I'm going to introduce them. Paul Van Der Speck and Henry, his dad. So pretty cool. Father and son hot rodder team. They have burnout contests between them. That's pretty cool. So when's the last time you saw that, right? So anyway, they had to come back. We brought the engine back to the shop. Usually my customer takes the engine home from the dyno, but we couldn't do that yesterday. So I had to bring it back, and so here it is, hanging on a hook, right for him to load it up. So, Paul, tell us a little bit about your truck and what you're going to do with it.
So it's a 1987 S10. I've had it for about 15 years. We've redone it basically top to bottom. It's got a turbo 350 with extra clutches. It's a 373 rear end, MSD ignition, and 355. That's going to make a lot of horsepower, and it's going to get me into a lot of trouble over the summer. And everybody's been telling me I am going to need new tires, so I'm hoping Dad's going to help invest in it, and it's worth a shot.
By the way, this is a return business for me. I did an engine for Henry about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's how I got to know Paul and Henry. Are great customers, and you feel bad they didn't see all this on the dyno yesterday, but they're going to have to watch the video. So, anything else, guys?
No. I just want to thank you for doing the motor and everything, Al. And
Thank you.
I appreciate all the time. It took a little longer than we expected, and turned out to be more of a motor than expected. But
most of them do.
Definitely going to be happy with it.
Most of them do. That's how it works. So.
I'll send you some videos of us doing some burnout competitions this year.
Good. Thank you for watching Gold Scratch.